you're listening to Carpool Theology. We're your hosts. I'm Grace.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Shauna.
And we are on the road to discover who we are in light of who God is. We are going to be joined by friends, leaders, and authors to discuss the intersection of faith and action. And we're going to have a ton of fun while doing it. So grab your coffee. Let's roll.
Welcome to Carpool Theology.
There's
There
She's
it is!
What's up?
Oh, I missed your little party horn sound.
You guys,
when
I
we
just got
recorded
this
last.
instant surge of joy. It's been so long.
Yeah.
It's been so long. I'm so excited. I mean, you guys, we're still putting out episodes, but we batch them. And so it's been a while since we've been in the car together.
And it's going to be a live one.
It's going to be a live one.
I'm feeling...
We are juiced up.
Yesterday, I was feeling like sassy girl. Like and I literally was in a staff meeting and I was like, you guys, I apologize now because I'm ripping. I'm like, no filter. You know, like when you're so tired and you're just like, let's go say what I'm going to say.
Yep.
Probably not the best.
Yeah,
but
that's definitely...
I at least cautioned all my friends.
Yeah, at least you gave it like a precursor.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yesterday in Bible study. Dude, I was talking about something full confession. I was like, yeah, I really struggle with these couple of things. I think I said 3 things or 4 things. And then I listed
you listed them.
I listened and she goes, that's only 3. You said 4. And I was like,
I would like to know what the 4th one is.
No,
immediately.
She was like, I struggle with this, 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 and this. And then she goes, yeah, and those 3 things, I was like, actually, it was 4.
And Brad was like, oh my Grace, what is it? That's the freaking funniest thing.
I was like, I'm just saying.
All these people are new to our group, so they probably were like, these crazy hooligans. And I was cracking up. I didn't care. That's just our friendship. I'm like, I don't care.
Oh my
I
gosh.
was like, what the heck are you doing right now? And she's like, I don't know. And then Grace, and then Bren was sitting next to her, and she's just like, yeah, Grace, shut up.
Yeah.
It's so freaking funny.
And we walk away, and Brenn's like, I'm so sorry that I told you. She was like, no, it's good. I need it.
I
need to be
I need it every
in.
now and then. I need
to be hemmed in.
But that's just, I was like, oh, and everyone, this is our friendship. Very, very direct line eye shot into our everyday. Not every day, but we're pretty cozy.
Yeah, let's most days.
Yeah.
Most days. More days than not.
Sorry, I didn't mean to just out you on the pod.
It's fine. I outed myself. I'm feeling sassy.
It's great. It's great. It's a fine Friday.
It is. It is my birthday weekend.
It is. We're doing it.
Cheers.
We're being wild, and we just decided to do something crazy that we don't normally do, and we're just hitting the road.
Wild and woolly. Not only are we hitting the road in the podcast, but immediately after, we're hitting the road
to Los Angeles.
To Los Angeles, California.
And we're going to go see the Lumineers. So if you're a Lumineers fan here listening, you're one step closer to heaven. I'm telling you that.
Yep. Yep. You're doing something right.
Because, man, those
Spirit
voices,
dwells in you.
We're so excited. But it was honestly, we say wild because it was very unplanned, and it's a very spontaneous situation that we were embarking
It came together
upon.
in about 30 minutes.
Yeah. About.
Hey, what if we did this? Yeah, what if we did?
Ask our husbands.
Yeah.
Okay,
we're doing it. We're doing it. We're totally doing it. It's happening.
So we're doing it, and we feel really
unknown caller.
excited.
Oh,
sorry.
nice.
Sorry. Is that you? That is you.
Yeah, it was.
You're connected.
You used airplane mode that, baby.
Anywho, this is chaotic. I'm sorry.
I mean, welcome to our world.
Yeah.
Nothing will be as chaotic as our Jason episode.
That is true.
Oh my goodness. That's why it was only 5 minutes long.
Poor Jay. We'll have to get him back in the car.
I would love to get him back in the car.
Yeah.
We started about 8 good conversations with that guy, and we need to finish a couple more of them.
Yeah. We need a part 2.
Yeah,
honestly, I would love to get him back.
Okay, we got into a good discussion, and I think we should really sparse it out here.
I do think we need to sink deeper in that. Yeah.
Yeah. When we were going through the joy-through, excuse me.
The joy.
How dare you?
Forgive me. We were going
bow to the brand.
When we were going through the joy-through, we were talking about the concept of girl money.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to confess here for all of my friends that I am a believer in girl money. Absolutely.
Same.
What did you say, Sean? If it's in your Venmo account.
If it's in my Venmo, it's just pretend money.
Yeah.
It's just an ideal of money.
That's how I feel about cash. If I have cash in my wallet, it doesn't exist.
Monopoly money.
So hold on. First, define girl money as according to our social media.
Well, I just
Bosses.
watched this like quick video on these two guys, which I don't know. This is getting hot topicy, but why are they talking about our philosophy of money? Anyways,
Right.
Yeah.
anyways,
There's a disconnect there.
yeah, there
right off
is.
the bat.
anyways, but they were talking of which, but were they wrong? No.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
gonna say,
let's
I
just
We
say
can
that.
absorb the message despite the message.
Yeah, they were talking about how like if you lend someone money and then they give you money back, like if they pay you back, then no money was spent.
It's free money.
It's pretty much-
You just made money. If I lent you
Because
$20
the money's gone. You don't have an expectation that it's coming back. Actually.
and then you give me $20, I'm like, dude, I just got $20.
I just made $20.
Guess who's going to Target?
I
This girl.
was $20 down. And now I'm up.
Yeah, exactly. If it's like from 10 to 20% off, it's 50% off.
Oh,
100%.
Like
absolutely.
I just yeah.
Honestly, though,
I'm such a believer.
confession, and sorry to my husband, he also has girl money vibes.
Sorry, Daniel.
He is very much so like honestly, I feel like he taught it to me.
Well, what if you have a
Whoa.
gift card? See, if I have a
That's
gift
like
card,
Inception.
like my mom, bless her, she gives me like a really nice gift card to Anthropology every year for my birthday.
Okay, Mom.
Come on up.
And so say she gives me like $100 gift card. To me, like those $200 jeans, I never would have bought. I'm like, dude, I'm getting them for half price.
Yeah.
All of a
You still
sudden,
spent $100.
it's an economical decision.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Daniel always gets on me about sales like that. Or like I'll be like, Old Navy, everything's 50% off.
Right.
He's like, yeah, but you have to use your Old Navy card. And I was like, yeah, then I actually am not spending any money. He's like, but then you pay interest, so it's not even 50% off. And I'm like, no.
That's not how that works.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Why would they do that to me?
I am smarter than that, you guys, but I like to play dumb.
So I can go
Hence
shopping.
girl
Yes.
money.
When I use my 5% off red card at Target,
Mm.
it's free.
Mhm.
What I just got at Target is
You guys, every time I have the 5% and I see my savings, I decide, okay, which part of this was free? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that lip gloss was free today. Fabulous.
Done.
I
It's a
pick which
reward.
one. I'm like, which one of you was free? Okay.
This
It
is my
justifies
reward.
it to me.
It's never the deodorant.
So
It's
bad.
always like the earrings or
Yeah.
the extra like
God.
cutesy socks you got.
I will say, and this actually is probably embarrassing a little bit, but I had a
It's okay. It's just the four of us in the
I
car.
did the rewards thing, and I had like $60 in rewards. I never used it
Nice.
for like so long, so I got like
Free money.
a lot of free things the other day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
How's that embarraing?
So
That means
did
I
you
spend
spend
a lot of money
100?
at
So did
Target.
you spend $120 to use that 60?
Well, I did do the little reward. Yeah, whatever. But
It's
there
like
was
the
a lot.
rewards at coffee, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I got my free one. I'm like, I spent $800 to get here
Yeah.
for my one free coffee.
But here we are.
But here we are.
But still.
Oh, guys.
Okay,
Anyways,
it's time. It's
Yeah.
time. It's time to
forgive us,
introduce-
Father, for our spending habits. That'll be another episode.
Yes. Oh yes.
I mean,
Oof.
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah, I was like, oof, gosh.
But the Lord needs to do some work in my heart still.
Yes. Yes. Oof.
Amazing.
Well, Shani,
Yes.
intro our guest.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to have our guest. I feel a little bit like we just did a smart list thing. Have you ever listened to that podcast?
No.
It's really funny. Anyway, they have a mystery guest. I feel like we have a mystery guest, but we have Ben Carr in the car.
Oh
my gosh. Ben Carr in the car.
Ben Carr.
How
Ben
many?
Carr.
You get that joke a lot. Be
Oh
honest.
my gosh. Well, when people don't think that my last name is Carson, they ask the inevitable question of, are you related to Derek Carr,
Yeah.
David Carr?
Oh gosh, because the Fresno tie-in.
Yeah, oh, exactly. And I'm not from here, so I went from feeling like my name was kind of a novelty to, oh yeah, I'm like a shoe-in celebrity now by association, so it's
See, Ben,
great.
if I were you, I would be like, yeah, I taught them everything they know.
Oh yeah, you know what, that's
don't
what
get
I
a
should
single
say.
shot-
You know, the
single shout-out.
boys, me and the boys tossing the pigskin around, you know?
Yeah,
This is-
taught them everything they know.
yeah, you're welcome, lads. So-
Oh my goodness
Oh,
gracious.
but yeah, Ben is a I'm just going to say it, Ben. And I know it's going to embarrass you, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, here we go.
Ben is a renowned therapist in our area, has helped so many, is the director of the Well Counseling Center, and has helped countless people. And every time I sit in Ben's office, I cry and end up seeing Jesus more clearly and myself more fully. So, Ben, I'm so glad to have you in the car talking about mental health in the church. And really, there's a million different roads I would love to go down. So we're going to pick a few. But yeah, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe why you love what you do. I mean, I assume you love what you do because you're so great at it. But tell us a little bit about your family, a little personal, a little profesh.
Yeah. Well,
what do you want us to know?
Well, first off, thank you so much for being willing to not just have me come on the podcast, but to even treat me to coffee too. I just learned that it didn't cost you anything, so I feel really good about that. What a relief. I was sweating it. And then you
50% off.
50% off. It is free. So yeah. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not from the Fresno area. You guessed correctly. I do love my job, which was kind of a pleasant surprise considering that I went to school for it, and you don't really know what it's like to do something until you end up doing it.
Totally.
But I was lucky to have a lot of mentors who validated, yes, this is what it's going to look like. This is what you can expect. There's still going to be stuff you're not going to expect. So I had my start at the Well Counseling Center as a trainee. So I started from kind of the bottom of what it means to start working in the field of psychotherapy. And thanks to Wendy Mooney, who started the counseling center, and just an incredible bunch of supervisors who were making sure that I wasn't making people worse, hopefully. That eventually led to today. That's been a 6 to 7 year journey, more or less. Wow. I'm happily married to my wife, Stephanie, and we have a dog named Yoshi together. So it's our little fur baby. Yeah, we didn't name him, but we loved the name so much that we were like, we're going to keep it.
So cute. What kind of dog is it? We love dogs.
He is like a Shih Tzu Pomeranian mix. So I really go for the burly man dog.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah. So go hunting with him, all that good stuff.
Yes.
Sorry. Everybody these days has a podcast, even your girls. Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So no matter what your setup is like, even if you're driving around in a car, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&A and polls are the best to get them talking. We have one right now. You can go fill out a poll when you go on Spotify for Carpool Theology. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. We've been using Spotify Podcasters from the beginning over here at Carpool Theology, and we highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. That's incredible. So good. Well, I literally, before we even started our conversation, we prayed, and I was already tearing up because I just feel like, this conversation around mental health. I work with young adults. I know all of us in this car work with young adults and high school students and even women. Like, it's rampant. And just the times we live in, and 2023 post-pandemic, what is that landscape like for you right now as a therapist, and what are some observations that you've made about like our current cultural moment?
Well, sometimes it's kind of a relief to talk to someone who doesn't work in the field, but who you guys all had to live through the past couple of years too. So the fact that you're anticipating that that's going to impact the mental health field, right on the money. It absolutely, we've seen a bit of an influx of people who are looking for care, because I don't think there's anything that's going to be more likely to compel people to identify whether or not they're stressed or they're feeling down or they're anxious than when they're forced to sit at home and think about those things for a prolonged period of time. And even today, even though a couple of years have passed since then, people are still kind of reeling from it. And on one hand, I'm glad to have a community of people who I work with who are there to help support people. But it is also kind of a heartbreaking realization that it's like times haven't necessarily gotten easier for people just as time has gone on.
So true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, as you see, like all of, because you've got one foot like kind of in the church world and one foot kind of in the therapy world. And what are some things that you see as like maybe false beliefs or misconceptions around mental health treatment, around like supporting others getting mental health treatment? If you could put your finger on just like a few of like the big sort of,
Yeah.
like, man, if I could clarify this, it would be powerful.
In and outside the church, right?
Yeah.
Both in and outside
Yeah,
the church.
yeah.
That's interesting.
Opinion on if those have any overlap, or even if there's
Yeah.
two different answers there.
For both, in that Venn diagram of, okay, so there's those of us who are in the car right now who are like, yeah, we go to church, we're, Christ is a part of our life, we've accepted him into our lives. Do we have some preconceptions about what mental health looks like as a community? Absolutely. Do we share some with the world at large that's a misconception? Is there an overlap in that Venn diagram? Absolutely. So with that starting point, the notion of what does pretty much everyone have a stigma about when it comes to mental health? I think it really has to do with the fact that most of us want to be what we perceive to be self-sufficient, where it's like, I take a lot of pride in being able to do things myself. I like being able to dress myself. I like being able to feed myself. I like being able to work and go home and have that reinforce my notion of I'm doing it. I'm living. I'm functioning. This is great. In fact, a lot of people define mental health as the ability to do those routine things with a degree of satisfaction and contentment. And if there's anxious worry or depression or other kind of dysregulated emotion, or even for more intensive cases, a dissociation or a disconnect from your sense of reality, a sense of uncertainty in navigating those things, that's automatically going to be distressing to you. But I think there's this misconception of this is something that I should be able to handle within myself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how that translates for those of us who are believers. The language changes to, I think I should be able to handle this myself, to, I think God and I should figure this out together. Just the two of us. In fact, maybe my putting it at his feet should look like me not using the people in my community to help me along the way. Maybe that's where God shows up sometimes, is in the hearts and minds of my neighbor, of the Samaritan who's there. I think a lot of people feel very vulnerable knowing that another human being processing that stuff with you and supporting you in that and kind of validating that, hey, it is distressing to feel these things, but these things are manageable and you don't have to go through them alone. I think a lot of believers feel, well, I'm not doing it alone. God's with me. And I guess my encouragement to anyone who's curious about, well, is therapy for me? Is this something that I should be interested in? I guess I would ask the more existential question of how much do you want to go through the hardships of life without support from people?
That's so good. Because most of us would say, like, yeah, we need community, like, community is important. Regardless of your socioeconomic background, regardless of your culture, like, community is so integral.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me to the next question. So when, like, if someone's like wrestling with like, okay, when do I look to my honest biblical community, and when am I like, I feel like I need to maybe loop in a professional?
Yeah.
Like, how do you discern that?
You, in asking that question, you're helping bring to mind other potential misconceptions about the therapeutic process. So that's super helpful. I think the distinction that people don't like about what it's like to go to therapy versus what it's like to say, hey, this is my life group, or hey, this is my best friend who, lucky me, I get to go to church with them too, right? What's the difference there? Why don't I just rely on them? A lot of people, I think, are very uncomfortable with the notion of going and talking to someone who, for them, is a complete stranger until they start working in counseling. So one of the benefits to your therapist just having the role of your therapist, just being that person who this is the context through which they know you, and you haven't necessarily had any history of development with them so far, what that does is it helps. It's not a perfect system, but it helps reduce the likelihood that that therapist is going to have as much of an agenda for you based off of what they know about you. So it's actually designed to kind of protect the person who's coming in looking for counseling, because it's kind of acknowledging we all have a bias. Even your best friend has a bias in terms of what they think you should be doing or what they think is best for you based off of what they know about you. And even if they might have some validity to that perspective, that might also mean that they're going to be a little bit more hesitant to be not brutally honest to you, but candidly confrontational with you. So it's a real interesting balancing act of how can we prevent people from, even if that person, if you have a friend who's like, I'm really good at being as objective as I can be, even you as the interpreter of what they're sharing with you, you might have a filtration effect of, yeah, but this is my best friend, and so of course they're on my side. And so the validation you could receive, it's like, well, yeah, but they're supposed to feel that way. They're my best friend. It kind of helps create a sense of legitimacy of this person has less of an agenda to process things with me, either in my favor or against it. And that doesn't mean that your community shouldn't provide those things to you. That's a part of what's enriching about having friends. That's a part of what's enriching about having a community. That's part of why we start life groups, right? It's like, it's good to have those things, but it's also really good to kind of expand your relational diet, so to speak, right? If I just eat dairy, am I really having a full, am I really treating myself in all of the potential ways I could?
Hey y'all, this conversation is getting good and we hope you're loving it. When you engage with what we do, it helps us bring even more amazing guests and topics into the car. So get involved. Your support means everything to us. Continued prayer, leaving us a review, answering our poll questions, or subscribing to the pod all add up in a huge way. We are so grateful to get to do this. Consider supporting us in a financial way through a monthly donation. Stick with us and find out more at the end of this episode of how you can get involved. Let's keep it rolling.
That's so good. It even, like, I would, just to affirm that, it's like, I've been in therapy off and on for years and years and years and years. And yeah, I think one, there's like the safety and security. And yeah, it's a little awkward those first couple of interactions potentially.
Probably for the therapist too.
You get used to it, but I'm kind of extroverted, so I'm kind of like, great, a stranger, let's talk. So I have to be aware of my own, guess what? Even as a therapist, I have my own biases that I have to keep in check too.
Yeah.
So
The therapist has been trained in how to like recognize those biases and set them aside. And then also, like, the greatest thing about like having those really good soul friends and that tribe of people is that, like, you can go to a therapist who can be like, okay, they are paid to be my professional friend, but also to like not keep me entrenched in maybe what is unhealthy patterns, and to like push me toward growth, to ask good questions, those kinds of things. But also then I can unpack, like, oh my gosh, my therapist said this, have you seen this in me? Or like, hey, like, I learned this, what do you think? And I can unpack that with my community. And I think that's been sort of like leads to more long-term health.
they strengthen each other, right? Yeah.
I think I'd love to ask this question because the series is about self-care, and that it is a form of like loving your neighbor as yourself.
Beautifully put, right?
How Jesus has asked us to love ourselves, and what that looks like. And I think often the way I've experienced therapy for myself personally or with others is they come to the end of themselves, or something happens, there's a trauma or a circumstance, situation, or maybe just mentally they're at their lowest and then they call the therapist. What does it look like to actively engage in taking care of our mental health with a talk therapist or beyond? And like not waiting till we are like at our breaking point. Does that make sense?
I think so, because I think you're kind of pointing out the reality that a lot of people, we find ourselves neck deep in the quicksand before we realize we're sinking, right? And it's like, oh, maybe now I should call for help, right? And that's a hard thing to master because God made us so adaptable that in our humanness, I think we can rush to a sense of obligation to adapt. And so we can adapt to like, oh yeah, this sand I'm sinking in, it's a little cold, it's a little slimy, but you know what? It's happening so slowly. There's almost this inability to fully realize that it's a problem until it gets to that point. So what I want to validate for some people is if it takes you a while to recognize that you're struggling with the problem, that's normal. It's because so far you have been designed to try and figure out how to do the best you can with it anyway.
It's good.
And so, because a lot of people, they get so deep into their challenge that they think, well, now it's too late for me to seek out care. Yeah. And so maybe that's the first thing I would want to confront is this notion of, well, I've already waited too long and I've already adapted so well. What's the point at this point? It's kind of being willing to ask yourself that reflective question of, but is it okay if I do some preventative care, so to speak, or if I do some, think about when you take your car into the auto shop, you're not just taking it when it's broken. You're like, I need that tune-up, right? Something that people might feel self-conscious about is the sense of obligation to do therapy, even in the sense of a tune-up. For me, part of what got me into my own therapy was, as I was doing my training, all of my mentors and professors were really strongly encouraging me to get into my own therapy. Mm-hmm. And it was a good opportunity for me to be humbled and realize this isn't just about this notion of you helping people who are sick. And I think that's another misconception is if you need therapy, it means that there's something pervasively wrong with you, right? And none of us are perfect. I think part of what I like about the community that I'm a part of is in our efforts to walk the straight and narrow, we don't have the delusion that we're perfect, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So our mission, our heart behind Carpool is to just have conversations to kind of unpack like who we are in light of who God is, right? That's our big mission. Mm-hmm. And so something we were discussing as we were talking about this episode is how do you feel some of the ways that we approach our mental health? What can they reveal to us or to others about what we believe about God in general? Do you think that there's a correlation there at all, or do you think that's a dangerous topic? Like, what are your feelings on that?
Ooh, well, first off, I appreciate the language of, is this a dangerous topic? Because I guess I'm a little too adventurous for my own good. So sometimes, because I'm like, great, a dangerous topic. Let's see how close to the edge of it we can get.
Good company.
Am I in good company? Great. Perfect. Okay. I chose the right car to carpool in, is what that means. Yeah. Thank you guys. Yeah. I usually find myself actually almost approaching that question from the opposite angle of what does how we think about God influence what we think about mental health? But I want to start it from that angle. What does our view of mental health? How does it contribute to our view of God? I think I would probably hearken it back to the human temptation, regardless of what your belief system is. I think there is an inclination, going back to that major point of a need for self-sufficiency, because a certain amount of self-sufficiency is healthy. And I think maybe you guys had grandparents who were kind of like, God helps those who help themselves, right? But we've heard that.
On a pillow.
Oh yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, home sweet home on one, and then yeah. I don't feel welcome, Grandma. What's happening? But
Yes.
In either case, it's regardless of whether or not we declare that we believe that, there's a part of us that values the notion of, but look at how strong I am if I don't need help from people. And maybe God's proud of me if I don't need help from people. And I think that we can really justify for ourselves this notion of mental health is something that I shouldn't even have to worry about thinking about addressing. Right? I'm mentally healthy if I'm not thinking about my thoughts or if I'm not worrying about those things. And that's not to say that mentally healthy people are obsessive over how they feel about things, but I'm always curious about, do you feel permitted in thinking about your relationship with God and thinking about your relationship with other people, what your experiences in life are like in the midst of your relationship with them? And I think as believers, we feel like, well, if God's truly in my life, then I don't feel A, B, or C way. I don't feel depressed sometimes. I don't feel anxious sometimes. In fact, I think we can even twist scripture to go from being this inspirational comfort of fear not, or hey, like I'm here to comfort you, to don't do this thing. How dare you, right? Like, where's your, it's like, why aren't you a good enough believer, right? I think there's a difference between the language of reassurance and the language of chastisement. And God's really good at encouragement, and people are really good at chastisement. And you don't even have to change the sentence to have it feel a different way.
Yes.
And so if you are used to people chastising you for your worries, for your concerns, for your stressors, for your sadness, then I think we can anticipate that God's going to feel the same way. And it's tough to remember, or to even feel free to have the space to be still and hear, because I think, at least in my experience, God's voice is a very quiet one, right? And a quiet voice is a confident voice. But it also takes a lot more effort to listen to.
Well, I was just gonna say, in some cases, it might even require retraining your whole brain.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
are used to experiencing authority in abusive ways or in diminishing ways or demeaning ways. And so when you read the scriptures, it comes off like shame and guilt.
Yes.
Like that rewiring.
Yes.
How we read the scripture, how we experience God.
Yes.
Also probably requires that we have to do a lot of work on the back end of our pasts. At least that's been true for me.
Yes.
That I have to talk to 9-year-old Grace sometimes, 10-year-old Grace, and remind her of the truths of God's word and the truth of who he says he is, regardless of my circumstances or how I might be experiencing him.
Yes. I'm very moved by the people who have experienced hurt in the context of the place where they were hoping that they would feel that safety, and yet they haven't given up on the concept. Like, there are so many men and women in my life who have felt hurt in their efforts to get closer to God, and the very place that you go to do that can be a place where accidentally, unintentionally, that hurt can happen. And nonetheless, even after all of that, there's still this drive of, but God's still the center of my life, and I want to have a community where people can help me. So to go through something like that and to recover from an association that's automatically what you're going to experience every time is pretty inspirational.
That's really beautiful. I hadn't thought about it like that. And I do love getting back to your question, Alex, too. Like, I love the the filters. Ooh, there goes our disco ball.
Party's over.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. It's fine. I can totally focus.
I'm here for you. It's okay.
But even just going back to like how we read scripture and like the voice and the tenor that we read it with, like a verse that is so often misused is don't be anxious for anything, but pray.
Yeah.
And that sounds very different. Like if you're saying, don't be anxious, just pray.
Yeah. God wants you to feel guilty about this.
Or you can read it as like, hey, don't be anxious.
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here
for
pray.
you. Yes.
Like, tell me about it.
Yes.
That's a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
It is. And so let's follow through on that. What I feel for some of the clients who I work with is they hopefully, just kind of with the establishment of the relationship, is even in the midst of reading that sometimes, nonetheless, we can still feel, yeah, but God, I don't feel you. Like I want to believe you're here. I'm reading here on this passage that you're telling me, even in those comforting words, that's the case. So what's wrong with me if I'm still struggling with that? And guess what? We got a pretty good book on our hands, because there's even passages that describe that phenomenon. that phenomenon of like, God, I am reaching out to you. And in this moment, you feel silent. And
Will you be quiet forever, oh Lord?
yes, yeah, exactly. Hello? Yeah, on the other end.
Forever?
Yes, yes. And what I have found is a lot of the time when I am in that headspace and I'm feeling obligated to only utilize what scripture has for me in that singular sense of read this, internalize it, read this, internalize it, read this, internalize it. What I realize is I'm getting caught in the feedback loop of this might be me trying to be self-sufficient with God versus maybe this is time where the comfort and support I need needs to come from the way God moves in the hands and feet of others towards me.
Yes, yeah, that's good. That the loops back to that original question too. Yeah, I love that.
So I know that you don't necessarily prescribe medicine. That's a different kind of doctor.
Yeah, psychiatry.
Um,
That was more math, like we said. I think we had talked
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
If I can avoid that. Yeah.
but I think like
We're gonna stick to girl math.
Girl, with girl dinner.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed, but
Yes.
yeah.
I did
Yes.
girl dinner.
Full
we've got
right on.
Triscuits and cream cheese.
Yeah, it's different every time I hear. So yeah.
But I do like in the world that I work in professionally, like there's a lot of just like wrestling, I think, around even not only like talk therapy. A lot of times the church specifically can get their head around like, okay, yeah, maybe I need to like loop in a professional along with my other community. Like pastoral counseling has kind of paved the way to that in a lot of ways, which is beautiful. But then there are times when, we live in fallen bodies, and sometimes our bodies just don't produce the chemicals that are conducive to like moving through life, and we need the supports of medicine. And I've been around people who have been really resistant to that idea. And I think that reveals kind of like what they think about God, and those ways too can be active there.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations where people are like, nope, I'm going straight to the meds.
Well, maybe let's parse that out a little bit. Like,
I kind of want to
why-
talk about both extremes.
yes, and like why meds,
Mm-hmm.
and how do those marry with Jesus?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when I think about, because those feel like such extreme polarities, right? Either it's like immediate prescription, no thought, like toss the pills in the back of my throat before the water even hits, or this is somehow you denying the way God designed you to be able to heal if you utilize this medication to help you, right? Like either way, one thing that I try and be a little gracious to, even though we can be frustrated with the extremity of that, is, okay, it's an understandable belief that, well, what does it mean if I am fearfully and wonderfully made and somehow I need some type of support? I think there's a distress that people run through in their minds of, does that mean I'm somehow failing to appreciate that God made me exactly the way I need to be, right? So like what's interesting about our adaptation, we go back to that point, is it's not just our bodies that adapt, it's our reasoning that adapts to our situation. And our adaptations can become a hindrance if it prevents us from actively pursuing change rather than passively adapting. And so the passive adaptation would be this reinforced justification of medication bad or medication is the only answer. So much of what the therapeutic process can look like, and I think this is kind of what intimidates people, is it's designed to help encourage them to think a little bit outside the box of what they feel they have to insist upon believing. And that's always scary to do. It's because we believe the things we believe for a reason. For the most part, it validates what we hope is true. And so this notion of, so wait, I'm supposed to expand my thinking beyond, maybe I don't have 100% knowledge about this, or maybe there's another way of looking at this, but this has kept me safe for so long. But then you find yourself in that cycle of, but are there factors that are illuminating to you maybe your reasoning is brushing against this wall of whether or not medication is the right choice over and over again, or whether or not medication is something you're relying on too heavily over and over again, right? We can be extreme on either way.
On either way.
Yeah, the very willingness to process, hopefully without sounding overly reductive about it, but, well, what are the pros and cons of if you make this choice, right? Because even people who have a pretty balanced view about medication, if they need it, are willing to acknowledge, okay, what are the potential side effects I'm going to be experiencing in this too? Because that might outweigh what to me feels like a credible justification to begin taking this medication. And then, and so even being able to process and confront that is really helpful. I think what I've seen in common for people is far more often there are people who are very hesitant to take medication at all than those who want it at the first opportunity. Yeah. But I have to admit, part of that's because of the nature of my work, where I don't deal in prescribing medication. Right. If you were to ask me what a psychiatrist experiences, they'd probably say the opposite. They'd probably say, yeah, I've got people who are like, both hands open, please give it to me. For me, because I don't prescribe, I refer a lot of people to contemplate the possibility of maybe this is an option for you. But usually even before that part of the process, I usually ask them, when was the last time you had a checkup anyway, beyond just a psychological one? When was the last time you went to your doctor? Yes. Because there are some instances where I'll have clients come in and they say, I don't know why, I've been feeling down for months. This is really stressful for me. And I'll say, well, when was your last checkup? They do blood work. They're like, oh, turns out I have hypothyroidism. And guess what? That's a contributing factor to having low energy, which leaves me feeling depressed and insufficient.
That is such a good point, and goes back to our series topic of like, and it right. We don't want to oversimplify it, but I think that's it. Sometimes is like when I first started going to therapy, I was dealing with postpartum depression, and my therapist told me. And it was so stupid. It felt stupid to me because it was like, I felt like all of my thoughts and my feelings were so big and cloudy and gray and I just felt really broken. And I'm like, it just feels overwhelming. I'm overwhelmed. And she goes, how about every day for 5 minutes a day, you go stand and put your bare feet in the grass. And it was like, what the heck?
Please, right? We get so skeptical, right?
Like, what's that gonna do?
Yeah, a fair question, by the way. Yeah.
Why does that matter? Like, why? What's that gonna? And I did it, and I would cry every day. I did it, and I would sit and put my feet in the grass, and it was like, this is so dumb, but so simple, and it was healing.
Yes. Yes.
I literally, it grounded me.
Yeah.
And isn't that like with therapists, like. As I talk about you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But sometimes they'll say things and it's just like, that's really simple. Like, drink a glass of water a day. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But it really comes back to that. Take care of your body.
Yes.
Because everything's intertwined.
Yes.
And you really emphasize that point of part of why we need other people to support us in our lives is how in the world are we supposed to keep track of every single way to take care of us when we're so complex, right? I think again, it would be so validating to be like, well, I don't have to worry about those things. I've got all of those things handled. But at the same time, when I explore with clients, do you have a lot on your plate? Pretty much to a person, they all say yes, or at least a lot more than people might think when they first look at me, right? Yes. And what's really unfortunate is when we don't feel worthy to receive care from others, we can actually kind of create this contagion of being resentful of the notion that other people might need support from us as well. Yeah. Right? I think there's a pattern that can develop of grandma's pillow, right? God helps those who help themselves. It's like, well, I didn't experience this and I turned out okay, and so you should be fine. And first off, my thought was, well, you're not very nice. So like, did you turn out okay? Or there is kind of, So we're so judgmental potentially, I know, but in some ways it's like I wish that people would reflect on the notion of, am I being compassionate in this moment? Yeah. And to reassure those because to even hear that notion that that's discompassionate, I'm not saying that you're not also permitted to have a healthy degree of skepticism of maybe we haven't looked at the whole picture here, or maybe there's ways in which I want this person to feel healthily equipped to handle things themselves. But most people are capable of handling things more themselves if they are shown how to do that, or if it's demonstrated to them, or if they're supported in their learning of how to do those things. And I think there's kind of this impression that we have that people are supposed to automatically know how to take care of themselves in all of the ways that matter. That wasn't true for me.
Yes.
I am so grateful for the people who didn't just assume, oh, this is obvious, you'll figure it out.
Totally.
And instead said, hey, let's kind of slow down and talk about this and what this is like for you.
Yes. Half of my conversations with young adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did
For me, it
you
takes me right back.
push over your laundry? When did you
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like when it, and some of them don't know, like
Yeah.
they don't know how. We
Yeah.
assume so much about each other or have
Yeah.
expectations that we should all be operating at this level all the time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think it just breaks up a lot of the shoulds, right?
Yeah.
And I know in my own brain, when I start hearing a lot of shoulds, it's equal to shame. Like, okay, shame is starting to seep in here. It's like the secondhand smoke that is starting to infiltrate, and I know where that leads. But I think what I'm picking up out of like all of your like responses to these conversation prompts is it brings me back to the garden of like our way, autonomy from God's way. Right? Is like that I should be able to handle this myself, or I should be able to handle this and partner with God, like add him on later on once I've got my stuff together a little bit, then I can go to him. I can't go to him in like all this mess.
Don't
That's
come to church
ridiculous.
until you're fixed, right? It's like,
Yeah.
none of us should be going to church then, because, none of us are 100% cured of the challenge of living.
Yeah, it's a good thing there's no scanner at the door.
Yeah, right? Yeah. A bouncer.
Like a metal detector.
Yeah.
Like, "Mer, mer, mer."
Yeah.
You
Still a sinner. Yeah.
gosh, man, I feel like I could talk to you for another 18 hours.
I still have coffee, so we're good. But yeah.
So how can we, as people who are leaders in our communities, our listeners are leaders in their own communities and micro communities and families, how do we be good brothers and sisters in Christ and to our people who we know that are struggling with mental health, who maybe have looped in professionals, maybe are considering that? Like, how do we love others well in their in their struggles?
Yeah, I think one thing that I communicate with some of my clients is this distinction between passive empathy and active empathy. And passive empathy is the natural sensation we feel of just relating to someone who's like us. And active empathy is the intentional and conscious effort to try and understand the benevolent motivations behind, potentially, because you don't know if someone opposite to you actually has benevolent motivations. But if you're willing to start from that potential angle and trust your ability to not overly buy into that, like you're permitted to be skeptical to it afterwards, but to exercise this notion of, okay, what about someone who politically, socially, economically seems to be the opposite of me? What is the potential good thing or good thing that they're after? Or am I under the impression that they want to live a good life like I do? That's active empathy, is working to consciously relate to someone who you, in your first blush with them, you're probably even a little bit repulsed by because they're so opposite to you. So how we help our community in general, in terms of helping people towards mental health, we will be repulsed by people's problems if we do not passively understand them. And so the ability to actively understand, okay, what would it be like if I felt this way? Could I actively choose to imagine a potential thing that could lead me to feeling this way? Like, doing that kind of helps soften the dialogue that you can have with that person, and it becomes less about you immediately wanting to fix them by telling them to think about something different. You're instead thinking differently about them. That's how we support people.
Because we can't control other people.
No, we can't. We can't. And I think there's times where we wish that they could control themselves, but that's where we can be discompassionate, right? It's like, maybe the active empathy is, maybe this person is, in fact, I'd be willing to bet it's very clearly difficult for them to do that in this moment. And am I willing to imagine what would make it difficult for someone to deal with that in the moment? So
That's really, really helpful and good. And I had
love
never actually heard that.
Mhm.
Active empathy, like,
Well,
man.
and it will still be messy. that
Yes.
person will
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
respond
Yeah.
the way you want them to respond.
Very
And then
insightful.
you're going to have to double down on your
Yes.
active empathy
Yes. Yes.
and choose whether or not to continue to enter in
Yes.
or boundaries. That's a big word, which we
Yes.
didn't really talk about, but maybe we can later in the series.
For sure.
But like, yeah, just this what does it look like to love beyond the place that I feel comfortable with
Yes.
and be
Yes.
actively empathetic beyond what I'm comfortable with.
Yes. And if you're struggling with that, maybe this is an opportunity for you to recognize maybe you need support so you can have the mental space to be able to do that. Because I've noticed that I am at my least compassionate when I am at my most overwhelmed, but also unaware that I'm sinking in the quicksand myself,
Exactly.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Samesies.
Yeah. Right.
Had
Yeah.
this talk yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
So good.
Oh
So
my
good.
gosh, what a great
Ben, thank you so much.
conversation.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
good.
Thank
You're
you.
not getting out that easy though.
Nope.
Oh,
We have
yeah.
two
Fair
more
enough.
questions.
We've
Fair
got
enough.
2 fun questions because we love a pun.
And they're quick ones.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Quick,
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Fun time.
So the first one, because we're in a car, talking to Ben Carr.
Oh my gosh. It took the end of the trip to reach that. Well, we
Not
did
to
it,
be
guys.
associated
But we
with
did it.
Derek or David.
Thank you. Yes.
Not
Thank
directly.
you.
Don't get it
Not
twisted.
directly. Yeah.
You can't have football players, potential football player, just lining up at his door.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, remember,
Because
I trained them though, so it's fine.
Of course.
So,
they
yeah.
taught them everything they know. What is fueling your tank? It could be something really silly. It could be like a weird sci-fi book that you're reading,
Oh,
or
yeah.
like
Yeah.
you know,
You don't
whatever.
think Ben's into romance novels?
Oh,
Maybe he is.
well,
Maybe it's like
we could talk about that
maybe
too.
Hallmark season's coming up, and you're like, I can't wait.
No, you're good. Yeah, you're good. Did we accidentally open a door we shouldn't have? Let's close it back up.
Oh, man.
I'm an avid Star Wars fan. That doesn't mean I think Star Wars is always good. In fact, that's probably what makes me a true Star Wars fan.
Mm.
Yeah.
But there's been a show that just came on called Ahsoka, and I've kind of been into. I didn't watch the show, like the cartoon series that preceded it, and it's definitely weird and wild and makes decisions where I'm like, I probably would have written that different. I'm not a writer, but I probably would have written something different. But even that's kind of like filling my tank. I'm kind of like, it's so nice to know that there's still content out there that kind of scratches that itch of what's happening in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
I can actively empathize with these characters who aren't real, you know? Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
fun.
that's so good.
So good.
Okay,
Oh,
what
good.
can't you leave home without?
This coffee. Yeah. And the fact that I did and that you guys had my back with it makes a huge
We
difference.
got you.
You got me. You got
Oh
me.
my gosh.
We would always love to drive you to work. So
Thank
Really,
you.
every
Thank
ride.
you.
let us know the next
Yeah.
time you need a ride.
It's way more fun this way, let me tell you. So
That's
thank
the next
you.
podcast spinoff is just like Uber, like
Oh,
theology,
yeah.
Uber
Yeah.
theology.
We take you to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll be looking forward to that. So yeah.
Gosh, thank you so much.
So much. Thank you so much, Ben, for
Yes.
being in the car with us, for being so honest and helpful. And thanks for what you do in our city.
Yep.
Super stoked about that.
Thank you guys for what you do. This makes a huge difference. Think about the fact that you have listeners who want to feel supported by what you guys do.
Aww.
Makes a difference. Yeah.
That's really kind.
Oh,
Thank
thank you for our free therapy session.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
bill us later.
I know. Yeah. Hey, you guys already took care of it. So
Yes.
Bye, everybody. Thank
See you
you.
later.
You've been listening to Carpool Theology. We hope this episode is encouraging, fun, and challenging for you as you walk with Jesus and your community. If you loved what you heard today, we invite you to join our genius team of monthly supporters. For as little as $3 to $5 a month, you can support Carpool Theology. We are committed to bringing authentic, honest, side-by-side conversations about faith in a fun setting like a drive around town. Click the link in our show notes or on our Instagram page at carpool-theology to start supporting us today. Thanks, fam. We'll see you in the car.